Welcome to the interviews of the four candidates for Judge of the Sixth Circuit Court, which covers Oakland County. Three of the candidates are listed on the August 4th primary ballot. The fourth is a writing candidate. The top two vote getters from the primary election will be on the November 3rd general election ballot. For background, the Circuit Court is the trial court with the broadest powers in Michigan. In general, the Circuit Court handles all civil cases with claims of $25,000 or more, and all felony criminal cases. Family division of the Circuit Court handles everything related to divorce, paternity, adoptions, personal protection actions, name changes, juvenile offenses and delinquencies, child abuse and neglect, and even far more. The Circuit Court also hears cases appealed from the other trial courts or from administrative agencies. The friend of the court is part of the family division of the Circuit Court and handles domestic relations where minor children are involved. There are 18 judges on the court. This is a non-incumbent position, and it's on the nonpartisan section of your August 4th primary. Then, as I said, the top two will be on the November 3rd general election ballot. The Circuit Court decisions can affect all of our lives. We just never know how or when. So please listen to these interviews and the questions and responses and see you at the polls August 4th. Thank you. Battersby Murphy. Maura is running for 6th District Circuit Court. Maura, would you please bring us up to date?
Hi, my name is Maura Battersby Murphy, and I am running to be your next Oakland County Circuit Judge. Thank you, Linda Holloway, for putting this important matter on. It is a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak about my candidacy. I am the best candidate to be your next Oakland County Judge because I have spent the last 11 years litigating civil, criminal, and family matters. I have represented indigent people, I have represented juveniles, those with mental illness, and the elderly. I have worked for indigent defendants and Fortune 500 companies. In addition to significant trial experience, I have also had a full alternative dispute resolution practice, including mediations, facilitations, and binding arbitrations. I can say with full confidence that my varied and in-depth experience will allow me to preside over any criminal, civil, or family matter that would come before me on the very first day I take the bench. This experience across all areas of law, and particularly my trial experience, separates me as a candidate. In addition, I am invested in our community. I have been a resident of Oakland County for over 30 years. I am a wife and mother, and I am raising my 3 sons here in Oakland County. It would be my privilege to serve as your next Oakland County Circuit Court Judge, and I appreciate your consideration of my candidacy.
You have answered, I think, the first question I was going to ask, but if there's anything else that you want to add, it was, to what extent have you practiced in the areas of criminal law, family law, complex civil litigation?
Okay, so I can elaborate, I suppose, on those when I answer the question, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You've already answered that question?
Oh, no, I would be happy to go into some greater detail.
Okay, give us a snapshot a little more if we need it.
Okay, great. As far as working in the various areas of the law, I began my career working with the state public defender. I represented individual criminal defendants in those matters. I represented juveniles in delinquency proceedings, as well as in children in need of protective services proceedings. So I fought for children and for their families to make sure that they had the resources that they needed to be successful in life. I worked with the elderly, ensuring that they were not suffering abuse or neglect in the nursing homes or by the hands of their own family, and in many instances assisted the family of the elderly in obtaining justice for their loved one who was being mistreated. I also worked with behavioral health clients who were subject to involuntary commitments, and again, worked with their families to address their behavioral health needs and reintegrate them into their families. I have had an extensive background in civil litigation. I have worked in first and third party no-fault cases, including investigating fraud by individuals as well as by networks of providers and in some cases attorneys. I have tried many civil cases. I have tried many cases to verdict as well as to the first day or second day of trial, and have handled complex civil litigation, including binding arbitrations and facilitations with many different parties and different perspectives. So I have worked extensively in all areas of the law that I would be asked to preside over, and know that that is what makes me the most qualified candidate.
Okay. If you observed a party in your classroom or in your courtroom being poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
Well, my first question in dealing with any challenge is often getting to the why. So in addressing an unprepared attorney, I would have to call that attorney likely into chambers and find out if it is is this a new attorney who needs some mentoring? If they didn't know what they were doing and I knew an attorney at their firm that I might be able to contact or reach out to, I would use my network in that manner and say, hey, this person seems like a really great hardworking person, but they might need a little bit more of your attention. If it was a solo practitioner, as often sometimes is the case with young, inexperienced attorneys, I would direct them to the appropriate section of the Oakland County Bar Association. That is an incredible organization with great mentorship and individual organizations that address criminal law or civil litigation. And so I could put them in touch with a mentor that way. If it's the case that an attorney is overwhelmed and they were unprepared for some reason like that, I would likely adjourn the matter to allow them to get it together or to allow their client to get a new attorney. I certainly would never want a person in our community to be prejudiced in their case because their attorney was unprepared. So it really would just depend on the circumstances. But ultimately, I would do what needed to be done to ensure that our people are being appropriately represented, and also that the attorneys in my jurisdiction have the support that they need to do a great job for the community.
Okay. What do you perceive as the greatest obstacles to justice, if any?
Well, I think there certainly are obstacles to justice. So the first part of the question is, I do believe that they exist. I think a big part of the problem, or a part of the problem rather, is access to excellent legal representation. We constitutionally know that for for criminal matters, you are entitled to have an attorney appointed for you. But there are many civil matters, and in fact happens all the time in the family court, where you are going back to court and you can't necessarily afford a lawyer. And so we oftentimes have people who are having to represent themselves in those proceedings, and oftentimes to their detriment. So access to legal representation is a significant problem today. I think that we can do a lot as far as promoting what we're doing right now. We're on a Zoom call, and that is something that the courts have adapted to due to COVID. That actually makes it a lot more convenient for attorneys in many respects. There are certainly some downsides, but in many respects, it allows me to make appearances in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb on the same morning in a way that I could not do if I had to physically appear in those courtrooms. I'm hopeful that that those efficiencies that are created are able to allow our attorneys to take on additional cases. And so my hope is that the ripple effect there is that there will be more available representation for our community.
Oh, good observation. I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. Last question. Why do you want to be a judge?
Why do I want to be a judge? I have always wanted to be a judge. I was raised to understand the need and the responsibility of serving your community. And that has been instilled in me from a young age. I think I had my first charitable contribution when I was 5 or 6 years old of my birthday money. I think, or I know, that being a judge is a very difficult task. It is a high responsibility. It is a difficult thing to preside over the kinds of matters that come before the court. And so I think that those who are able to do things should do things. And I don't think that there are very many people in our community that are able and willing to take on the role of being a judge. So I have the temperament, I have the experience, and I have the desire to take that on. And so I think that I need to, for my community, to dedicate my time and my talents where they are most needed.
Okay, thank you very much, Maura. Appreciated the time you've given. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing before I end this meeting?
I would just like to say that if anyone would like to learn more, they can go to my website, which is mauramurphyforjudge.com. I have a campaign Facebook page, which is Maura Battersby Murphy for Oakland Circuit Judge. And you can also feel free to reach out and contact me. My campaign phone number is my personal cell phone number. That's 248-885-2108. And feel free to call. I have a newborn. I am up at all hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see, let me see. Whoops.
Good evening. I don't think we're recording yet.
Yeah, we're recording.
Oh, we are recording. Okay, I'm sorry. I just didn't see that.
That's okay.
Good evening. I am Lori Saban, and I am a candidate for the Sixth Circuit Court Judge, non-incumbent position. And I am glad to be here with the Birmingham Women Republicans Club. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate all of the hard work Linda's made or put into making this happen. I am running for judge because I have a strong sense of justice and the importance of our courts doing right by our families. I was raised in a family that unfortunately, my parents were divorced when I was very young. And following both of my parents' remarriages, I was adopted by a step-parent. And then my mom and my stepdad, who is my adopted dad, ended up divorcing once I graduated college. So unfortunately, in my family, I have experienced what it's like to go through 2 divorces. And my early experiences within my own family, and also my understanding of the importance of the justice system for people to find the help that they need to protect themselves and their family and their community. It was formed at an early age. That's why I went to law school, and that's why I became a lawyer. Primarily, I have focused in family and juvenile court work, although I've done work in many different areas of the law, including civil litigation, some minor misdemeanor type things, probate work, estate planning, Social Security appeals, a variety of things, because when you work for a small firm, you've got to be able to do everything. And, but my passion really lies in helping families. I get through the legal system and the court process, hopefully better than when they started. So I'm running for circuit court judge because I really want to serve the people, and especially in the family court and juvenile court field. Generally, there's an opportunity for new judges to serve in that position, and it would be my intent to remain in the family division for the entirety of my career. You know, I understand other people don't really find a lot of satisfaction or interest in that area. It is very high conflict, it's very emotional, it's very difficult, and they'd prefer to be in other areas of the law. That's my passion, and that makes more sense for me to fit in that position. I have been involved in my community and doing community service, along with volunteering at my children's schools and with their soccer teams. But the majority of my work outside of the practice of law and my job at the front of the court, where I've been a referee now for just over 17 years, so I'm already an experienced hearing officer, know how to run a hearing room efficiently, and give people an opportunity to be heard, along with give them the respect and dignity that they deserve when they come to court, along with making clear, thorough recommendations based upon the law and each individual's case. Outside of my actual 9 to 5 or 8:30 to 5 job, I am involved in many bar activities and am the president of the Referees Association of Michigan and have been serving on the State Bar's Judicial Ethics Committee for just over 10 years now, along with some other committees primarily focused on education, ethics, and professionalism and civility. Those are very important to me because I think we need to ensure that judges as well as lawyers practice law and give people the opportunities they need to within the legal system that they deserve. And we need to make sure that they're following the rules and the way they go about that. So those have been the primary areas of focus of my professional career. And I would continue to serve in professional activities within the bar and hopefully even have a more active role as a member of the bench. I think that they are a community member and they have a responsibility to the public that they serve, being accountable and accessible to the public, but also using that position as a judge to improve the legal system. I try to do that the best as I can as a lawyer, but certainly I think people are a little more deferential to judges. So that is why I'm running for judge, a little bit about me and what I hope to accomplish if you elect me to the bench.
Okay, you touched on a couple of the areas that I would be questioning you, so just add anything you want, because my first question was, to what extent have you practiced in the area of criminal law, family law, or complex civil litigation? And you touched on family law. Anything that you want to add about criminal law or complex civil litigation, or do you think that you stay in the family law area of the bench?
So my hope would be to remain in the realm of family and juvenile court work. That has been the emphasis of my career. And like I said, I should tell you, I've been a lawyer for 25 years. The past 17 and a half, pretty soon, I will have served within the family division as a referee. So for that period of time, I've solely worked in family court. Now, complex litigation, it may not be the same as commercial litigation, but I have to tell you, I have had to read complex trust agreements. I have had to go through very complicated business tax returns, business records, and financial records. A lot of the other areas of the law come up in family law when there are disputes over property, over children, over support. So I do get a lot of information and have to have some knowledge about a lot of those areas. People that are charged with a crime, I need to understand what that crime is. I need to understand what the possible consequences are if they're convicted. And so it does touch on a lot of areas of the law. Even bankruptcy law affects family court cases. Whether or not people can proceed in certain types of litigation includes family court if you've got a bankruptcy pending. So I have had experience, even while I've been at the front of the court, addressing and touching upon many similar overlapping areas. When I was in private practice, I did do some representation in some minor criminal and traffic offenses. I did have a partner that I worked for as an associate that was involved in some complex civil litigation involving personal injury suits and things of that nature. I have not done a lot of contract drafting in a long time. Prior to getting my first job at Legal Aid, I did work for a contract house working at Sprint in their network real estate department, where I negotiated their contracts and reviewed the contract language with their legal staff. So I touched upon some contract work early on in my profession.
If you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
That's a very good question. And unfortunately, that has arisen as a hearing officer. Sometimes that had happened to me even when I was practicing law as an attorney. when opposing counsel wasn't really as prepared as they needed to. And the first thing that I would do when I noticed that there was a problem is to stop the proceeding. If it was a situation where both parties were represented by counsel, I prefer to go off the record to have a private conversation with the attorneys, because I certainly don't want to unnecessarily embarrass an attorney. I had a situation where it turned out one of the attorneys was not prepared for court. She had asked her client to adjourn the matter. Her client refused to do that, and her teenage daughter had just gotten out of the hospital, had some serious medical problems. And that was a very understandable reason why she wasn't prepared, and we worked something out so that the matter did get adjourned, and that her client understood that it would be best if we held the matter for another day. On another occasion, an attorney just didn't prepare. They should have done a better job, and they didn't. And it was apparent that it was going to negatively impact the outcome of the case. So I did speak with the attorneys, and in a polite but very firm way, explained that as a referee, the attorneys could object to my recommendation, and I really didn't want to waste anybody's time by having the hearing done sloppily by an unprepared attorney and requiring them to come back to court to see the judge. So I gave that opportunity, or that lawyer, an opportunity to have a little more time so that he would be properly prepared. And I ended up setting very specific deadlines and expectations to ensure that we didn't have that problem happen again in the case.
Okay.
It was an unfortunate situation, but really the only person that it hurts is the person they're representing.
What do you perceive as the greatest obstacles to justice, if any?
So I think one of the greatest obstacles to justice is the disparity in people's earnings and resources, and how that can play out in the outcomes of a case. I'm at the front of the court, so I do have an awful lot of people that are self-represented, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. But somebody with more education, with more experience, even if they're not represented by a lawyer, sometimes can do a better job presenting their case, or is better prepared. The other problem is that, in criminal cases, the defendant is entitled to court-appointed counsel. But in civil cases, you don't have that right. So if, let's say, you were trying to sue because you were injured in an accident, you may have an attorney that's provided to you by your insurance company, but the defense attorney has far more resources and may prolong the litigation, may send ridiculous amounts of discovery to try and bury you and slow you down and discourage you and encourage you to reach a settlement. And sometimes the result of the case isn't what would happen if you went to trial. Because of the situation you're in, you end up coming to an agreement when perhaps you wouldn't have if you had an equal playing field because of the resources you had. And I think the same is sometimes true for people that are low income involved in the criminal justice system. They have court-appointed counsel who's certainly going to try and do the best that they can for them. They took an oath to practice law to the best of their ability, and they're expected to do that and not commit malpractice. But the reality is, sometimes when people are awaiting a decision from a criminal case, there are other real life consequences. Maybe there's problems with being able to hold down your job while the case is pending, and other consequences that cause somebody to end up entering a plea agreement that they may not have agreed to otherwise. So I think the disparity of resources does affect people's decisions about how to proceed in a case.
Okay. And the last question, which you really addressed in your introduction, but if there's anything you want to add to it, was why do you want to be a judge?
So when I was the little girl and my parents were arguing about my parenting time schedule, I got to meet the judge in my case a few times because that was his job. He had to interview me. And I thought it was really important that children's voices be heard in court. And I appreciated getting to see the judge and expressing my opinion. But it seemed like both of my parents had lawyers and I didn't have one. I didn't have anybody to speak for me. So originally, that's why I wanted to be a lawyer in elementary school. And then as I learned more about our justice system and how it worked, I believed in the justice system. And I really have strived to be a model of a good attorney that, hopes to mentor other young people who are interested in the law to become the types of lawyer we want to see. It shouldn't matter anything about who you are or where you come from. Anybody that's got the drive and the skills and the ability to work hard should get to be what they want to be. But sometimes we need good role models to shepherd us along. And I want to be that sort of judge. I want to make sure that we give justice to people. Our victims need a fair, impartial person to hear their case that's going to be patient and compassionate, balancing the interests of both sides of every case, whether it's family law or criminal law or a civil lawsuit. Those are the qualities we need for a judge. And I've demonstrated that in the 17 years I've been a hearing officer, because I really think that being a judge is providing a public service to people. And that's a pretty big responsibility I take seriously.
Well,
I want to make sure that people feel heard, just like I felt heard when I got to see the judge when I was a little girl.
well, thank you very much, Lori, and we'll be looking for your name on the ballot August 4th. Thank you for taking the time.
Let your membership know that if you'd like more information about myself and my experience and why I'm running for judge, you can go to my website at www.savinforjudge.com. Thank you.
Our third candidate is Clarence Dass. Clarence's name got cut when he did his introduction, so I'm introducing him. So we'll listen to Clarence Dass.
I have been a lawyer for over a decade. Half of that time I was a prosecutor in Oakland County. I served in the Special Victims Unit of the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office, and I prosecuted some of the most serious crimes that no human should ever have to experience. Crimes like sexual assault, domestic violence, child and elder abuse, and even murder. At the end of 2016, I left the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office and started a law firm, my own law firm. That's where I am filming this right now. And every single day since then, I represent people fighting for their liberty, making sure that government doesn't overreach, and protecting people. So people who have faced human trafficking and domestic violence, and viewing people from the other end who are on the other end of the system. When you elect a judge, I think you need to elect somebody who understands what it's like to be every single person in a courtroom. I understand what it's like to be the victim of a crime, the police officer, but I also understand what it's like to be the person charged with a crime, the person fighting for their kids, the person fighting for their liberty. And I myself have been at the most desperate moment of my life, the way many people are when they come to court. I'm a cancer survivor, and in 2017, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at the age of 31. I was in the 1% of the entire world who get colon cancer under 65, and I was told I had a 15% chance to live. That perspective of going through that and beating the odds every single day, fighting for my own life while continuing to work and represent my clients, I think gives me a perspective that's unique in this race, a perspective that will help give me empathy for everyone who comes into a courtroom, whether they're on one side of the issues or another. I will follow the law, but I will do so with that life experience and empathy to understand every person that comes in the courtroom. So I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Clarence. First question, to what extent have you practiced in the area of criminal law, family law, complex civil litigation?
Well, I've done a little bit of most of those things. First of all, as a prosecutor, I practiced all criminal law for 5 years, but there were mixes of family law in that because I was in the special victims unit, and the majority of our cases involved family disputes, domestic violence, child abuse, personal protection orders, custody issues. So I've practiced family law and criminal law my entire career. When I started private practice in 2016, I represent businesses. I handle commercial and civil litigation in addition to family law and criminal law. So I really have a very well-rounded background that I think will be suited for the bench, regardless of where they place me if I have the honor of being elected.
Thank you. Second question. If you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems we have in our justice system today is when people are not at a level playing field in a courtroom, and many people can't afford an attorney. Many people don't have the knowledge of the law. So I will do what I did when I was a prosecutor. When I was a prosecutor and I had what we call improper defendants, meaning people who come in without a lawyer representing themselves, which they have the right to do, I would make sure that they know their constitutional rights. And if I believe that they are being taken advantage of or being squeezed into a situation that they really shouldn't, our job is to do justice. And I will either appoint an attorney or direct them to resources that will help them so that they are not taken advantage of, and it is in fact a level playing field.
Okay. Third question. What do you perceive as the biggest obstacles to justice, if any?
Well, that in some ways piggybacks on my previous answer in the sense that I think that access to justice is probably the biggest problem we face as a society right now. That means people who feel like they don't get justice, who don't have access to the courts, who can't oftentimes get to court. And the way to curb that is by education and awareness and resources to make the courts the people's court. It is, of course, the people's court funded by taxpayers, and we should be accessible to the public. So having courts in schools, for example, gives high school students and young people education about the courts and information about the courts. Having public proceedings at all times, which is required by law, is extremely important. Giving people resources so that they feel like they have an investment in the courts because they are, in fact, a steward of the court too, and a shareholder in the court, will be one great way to give more access to the courts, which I think is a huge problem as it is right now.
Okay, and last question. Why do you want to be a judge?
Well, this is a question, especially in the middle of campaigning, I ask myself almost every day. The truth is, I have a great law firm and I love what I do, but I have been on so many sides of our justice system that I have the experience that I think can really help other people. Having been a prosecutor, having been a defense attorney, having run a law firm in a small business, having been a cancer survivor, I really understand what it's like to be the person coming to court. And at some point you look at your life and you think to yourself, what is it you really want to do with the rest of your life? And what I want to do is help others and continue to help others. The best way to do that is to improve our judiciary, to have judges who understand the human experience while following the rule of law. That, in my opinion, is the winning combination for a judge, and I am called to that by a desire to help others.
Well, thank you very much for answering our questions, and we'll be following you on your website.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you all for watching.
I want to welcome Nadine Hayden, who is running as a writing candidate for the Sixth Circuit Judge. Bring us up to date, Nadine.
Hi, I'm Nadine Hatton, and I am running for the Sixth Circuit Court Judge seat. A little bit about me. I want you to know that I am uniquely qualified to serve as the candidate as the next candidate or the next judge on the circuit court bench for this reason. I taught high school and I taught public high school for 15 years. And while I was teaching public high school, I served as a union steward. Also, while I was teaching, I went back to school twice, once to earn a master's degree in education. Then I went back a second time to earn my law degree, part-time evening. It took me 5 years to earn my law degree. After I earned my law degree, I went back to school one more time and earned an LLM, which is a master's in law in federal criminal defense. After I earned my master's degree in criminal defense, I opened my own practice. I've been practicing with my own practice for about 10 years. I primarily handle adult and juvenile criminal cases, as well as neglect cases. And that's where the parent it's alleged that the parent has neglected or abused the child. I normally represent the child in those matters, but I can represent the parents, the mother or the father. But when I represent the child, it's my responsibility to make certain that the child is receiving the appropriate services. In my work as in the neglect cases, the Oakland County Circuit Court bench, the family bench, the same bench that I'm asking you to elect me to, awarded me with it's called the Sandra Silver Advocate for Children Award in 2017. I also won an award as a teacher for Teacher of the Year by from Fox 2 News. While I've been practicing for 10 years, I was also asked to serve as a magistrate in the 43rd District Court, where I'm currently sitting as magistrate and maintaining my own practice. As a magistrate in the district court, I handle arraignments, which means I advise people of the charges that they have. I set bonds. I can also address some civil matters and take pleas on some minor misdemeanors. And of course, as a magistrate, I handle all traffic matters. I'm excited about the next opportunity, and that is to serve the people of Oakland County as an Oakland County Circuit Court judge.
Thank you, Nadine. You touched on some of this in your introduction, but to what extent have you practiced in the areas of criminal law, family law, and complex civil litigation?
Thank you. Yes, I've practiced in criminal law and family law for 10 years. As I've already stated, I started my practice as a criminal lawyer and realized that the criminal law intersected with the family law, meaning the neglect cases. And so those two areas often met. I would have parents who were accused of neglecting their children, but they also had a criminal case or a criminal case which led to a neglect case. So that's how one led to the other, and I am currently practicing in both areas. I had a hearing today for criminal. I had a hearing yesterday for neglect. So I'm actively practicing and defending individuals in both areas. I don't have very much experience in complex litigation, other than if you include what happens in the criminal case.
Okay. Second question. If you observed a party in your courtroom being poorly represented by an unprepared or ineffective lawyer, how would you handle the situation?
Well, actually, this has happened to me once in court. What I did was I felt comfortable enough the person was actually on the record, to walk up to the person and whisper in their ear to ask them to ask for a recess or to pass on the matter. And the person did. The person and I, that attorney and I, went out into the hallway and we talked, and I explained to the person what I observed and how to perhaps make some corrections. The attorney was very receptive and went back on the record and made the following corrections. So again, having been a teacher for 15 years, my passion is teaching. I am involved in teaching programs, teaching and mentoring new attorneys through the Criminal Defense Attorneys Association of Michigan, CDAM, where I serve as an instructor teaching trial skills to new attorneys. Whenever I see a new attorney in court, I introduce myself and talk to them and explain to them about the court and answer any questions. So aside from that, I would hope that the judge would also see that there was an issue and pass on the matter, or have a sidebar with the attorney and perhaps adjourn the case to another date. Thank you.
Okay. What do you perceive as the greatest obstacles to justice, if any?
Well, we look at our current date and times or current events. We know that one of the main obstacles to um, justice is equality and equal access to the court. We know that there's disparity in the court amongst minorities, specifically African Americans, where African Americans seem to represent a higher number in the court, but have higher sentences. I believe it's important that the bench reflect the diversity and racial makeup of the people of the county. That would allow defendants and individuals who come before the court to feel a little more comfortable. I mean, everyone's nervous because it's court, but that would allow them to feel more comfortable. Also, it would allow the judge to bring their life experience, their cultural experience to the bench to further educate their fellow or colleagues or associate judges. In addition to that, I also believe part of the issue with justice is, and I as a magistrate have this authority where I set a bond, and we are incarcerating people at an alarming rate. And so some of the bond initiatives that are out, and Michigan has a presumption that we impose a personal bond unless unless we can identify reasons and place those reasons on the record. So the rate of incarceration for nonviolent defendants is alarming. Therefore, we need to look at, and this is what I do look at when I'm setting bond, the ability to pay bond and get out. Bond is not meant to be punitive, just to ensure that the person will return and participate in the court proceedings. Also, we need to be looking at different programming, specialized programming to assist and to utilize in sentencing individuals where jail is not the only resolution or the knee-jerk reaction. We should be looking at other alternative programs to treat issues or to answer the reason or address the problem that brought the defendant to the court.
Okay. And last question, why do you want to be a judge?
Well, I've wanted to be a judge since I was 5 years old. So what has happened in my life is that I have made certain, but let me back up. When I say I wanted to be a judge since I was 5 years old, I come from a family where I am the first generation college. And in fact, I'm probably none of my aunts or uncles attended college. None of my immediate cousins attended college. So I'm the first and only on my mother's side of the family. And I remember sitting on the porch telling my grandfather that I wanted to be a judge, which when I look back on is kind of interesting because my family was not connected to any judges, any attorneys, and didn't know anything about, I hadn't been around the legal profession. So since then, everything that I've done has been designed to get me to this date. As I explained, I was a high school teacher for 15 years. Prior to that, I attended U of M Ann Arbor, where I earned a bachelor's degree in Spanish, and I had earned my teaching certificate, and I taught 15 years. And as I've already explained, I went to school at night and earned my law degree. And then I earned my LLM. I opened my own law practice. And what I want the people to know also, I've worked very hard, and who you see before you is a very hardworking individual who has demonstrated determination and perseverance. So, and I want to share this with you. When COVID-19 hit, my campaign stopped. Everything stopped. I wasn't able to gather signatures. I wasn't able to hold fundraisers. I wasn't able to do anything. And I didn't know what was going to happen from day to day or week to week, like you. Finally, there was a lawsuit filed, and the state reduced the number of signatures from 4,000 to 2,000. Well, once that reduction occurred, I still needed 500 more signatures. I went out in the community during the pandemic, during the lockdown, of course, protected, and people saw my determination, and they stated to me, if you're out here during this pandemic, during this lockdown, you are determined and you're the type of judge that we want. And they supported me and they signed my petitions. Well, my name's not on the ballot, and I'm a write-in candidate because a candidate in this race challenged my signatures. The state reviewed the signatures and found a technicality, and due to the technicality, I was disqualified from having my name on the ballot. But that didn't stop me. I decided to run as a write-in candidate. One, because I believe it should be the voters who make the decision who they want to serve as their next judge. Also, I believe that it's important that my campaign gives a voice to the voters. Now, what I would like people to do is to visit my website, NadineHatton.com, to learn more about me, to also follow me on all social media platforms at Hatton for Judge. That's Hatton, F-O-R, Judge. And you will see that I'm uniquely qualified to be your next circuit court judge, professionally and educationally. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. But most importantly, please remember that on your August 4th primary ballot, whether it's the absentee ballot or at the poll, write Nadine Hatton. And remember, please remember to use your pen to raise your voice on August 4th. Write in Nadine Hatton on your absentee ballot or at the poll.